seed. Connor's got a nice little lovely setup with a bunch of things from the nursery, all fresh in at Fig, that we'll be talking about today. So let's just get started. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So, first question and most common question we always get is what can I plant right now?
Okay, so what happens to us in LA is we kind of have an in-between season. It's our summers tend to be late, more like August, September, October, instead of June, July, August on the East Coast. So we kind of have in between. Sometimes you can get very hot weather, sometimes it's not so hot. So a lot of the things I like to plant now are things that can take a bit of heat. And a great rule of thumb for anybody out there wanting to plant any of the leafy greens is the thicker the leaf, the more it can take the heat. So the delicate lettuces are going to struggle if you have extended periods of extreme heat. And the kale, chard, I have a cabbage here, a bok choy, they're much, much hardier in the warmer weather at this time of year. Also, it's a great time to start your seeds for all the winter crops because it's going to take about 6 weeks before you're going to be transplanting them into the soil. And then we're going to be into November or even early December, and they'll all be ready to go in. And usually we get pretty cool weather through those months, December, January, February, and even March. So, yeah, what I'm going to say is plant your leafy greens now. All the herbs are good to plant now. All the flowers are good to plant now. And then try and do some seeding of other things that are a little bit more heat sensitive, shall we call it. And I'm talking about the fine lettuces, the peas, the brassicas. Although the brassicas can be planted now from seedling because they're not going to flower for probably another month, 6 weeks. And usually by then it's cooled down enough. They're really leafing right now. And most of the brassicas, the leaves are pretty robust and heavy anyway, so they're not going to get fried up like delicate lettuce.
Yeah, absolutely. So we just got over a really big heat spell in LA, and it's very possible that we get another one. And so we're kind of sort of in that transitionary time. A lot of people ask the question, hey, we don't ever get frost and it's still very hot outside. Why can't I plant tomatoes and peppers and things like that all year round?
Well, it's a great question because people wonder, it's 92 degrees, why can't I grow tomatoes? It's to do with hours of sunlight, not temperature. So there are not enough hours of sunlight in the day at this time of year, and they're only going to decrease through December 21st, and then they'll slowly increase. But what happens is if you plant tomatoes now, number one, they're not going to get enough sunlight. They'll grow very slowly. And then once you get the cold nights in November, December, January, it'll usually do the plant in. They can't take the cold. Ditto with peppers. Any of the summer plants, which are usually the fruiting plants, that'll be cucumbers, peppers, squash, tomatoes, melons, watermelons. They're all summer and they all need long hours of daylight.
Yep. And the infamous question that you love to get is, what about winter squash?
I'm dying to answer that question. Winter squash, it's a little bit of a misnomer. It's not a squash you can grow in winter. It's a squash you can keep for winter. So any of the hard-skinned, dense squashes like butternut or kabocha squash or acorn squash, they can all overwinter. You can keep them for months. So you get to eat them in winter, but they grow in summer and they don't grow in winter.
Exactly. Perfect. So before we start getting into seeds and talking about like what we can plant right now, what are some of the solutions that you recommend for doing for amending the soil? What are things that winter vegetables need specifically in comparison to summer varietals?
Okay, so all the summer plants, think of it like this. Fruiting plants are huge feeders. Leafing plants are low feeders. So in the summertime, you really need to boost the nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium in your soil. In the winter time, you do need to nourish the soil with NPK because it's going to have been all used up in the summer, but they're not as big feeders. one of the essential things to know about winter amendment, shall we call it, is most of the leafy greens you grow, they have very little calorific value. You are growing them for the minerals, and that's their main nutrient. So what you want to do, make sure in the winters that you remineralize your soil. So how do you do that? We have a couple of things here. One of them is azomite, and azomite has the full spectrum of minerals. So think calcium, magnesium, zinc, all those things that your body needs. You're going to put those in the soil. The plants absorb those nutrients, and then you eat them through the leaves. Another product we have is rock dust, and rock dust is basically very similar to azomite, but it comes from much more different sources. This is basically made from volcanic ash, and this comes from different rock sources, but they're two great things to put into your garden in winter. Now, this year, for all of you who bought 420 soil and love it, Evie Stone brought out a fertilizer called 420 Recharge, and what I love about this is it has all the nutrients of 420 without filler. So if you've bought 420 in the summer, this has the equivalent of probably 10 or 15 bags of 420 nutrients, and that's high NPK. And if you put some of this in your soil now, put a little worm castings and compost too, and a little bit of azomite or rock dust, you'll have a perfect winter setup to grow your leafy greens and your brassicas.
Absolutely. I use all of those products at home, and with the recipe 420 you see results within a couple of days. It's unbelievable. And then and then the rock dust, I mean, the vibrancy in the greens of your greens is so much richer, but also, I mean, nobody's really measuring the mineral content, like how healthy your vegetables are, but you can definitely taste the difference, and it just makes them that more impactful.
And a great test is to go down to your local supermarket and buy a head of lettuce or some spinach, and then take some from your garden and taste them at the same time. There is a massive difference in the flavor and intensity, and basically that's to do with mineralization.
Absolutely. So let's go to starting from seed. We have two methods for starting from seed: direct sow versus starting inside. So, Conor, do you want to give your spiel on which method you prefer and the techniques of how you do it?
Look, you can do both, absolutely do both. But I find, in my experience, you are much better off growing your seeds in a seedling tray before you transplant them. And I'll tell you why. The first leaves of all these vegetable plants are called the cotyledon leaves. They're not the true leaves of the plant. They're incredibly susceptible to being eaten by pill bugs and earwigs. Once the true leaves appear, the pill bugs and earwigs don't eat them. And don't ask me why. I don't know why. But what I found in the past is I put out lettuce seed, rows of it, and it all gets eaten. And once they take the cotyledon leaves off, the plant is history because it can't photosynthesize. So I usually start in a tray like this. We have them at the nursery. There's 72 cells, and fill them with some seedling mix. And one of the things I love about these trays, Sam, is you can put water in this part, and it doesn't drain here. This drains. You can put water in this part, and then put the seeds on top so that they're slightly, just maybe a quarter inch submerged in the water, and they keep the seedlings in the soil moist. One of the problems with sowing in ground is most seeds have a very low depth, planting depth. So you're talking about, quarter to half an inch to 3/4 of an inch. And that's basically the surface of your soil. So what dries out first on a hot day is the first inch of your soil. Mm-hmm. And if you're not out there watering those guys twice a day, they're probably not going to make it. Whereas if you have them in the tray with some water in it, it's basically a bulletproof system. Okay, so in the tray, you're going to leave those seeds. I'm going to give you a little example here. This is very important. Don't be like me. What I want you to, if you can see that, I've marked with tape exactly what I've planted, how many rows, and the date. So if you do that, you won't get mixed up. Do it first before you even plant, and then you know exactly what everything is, so you're not confused later on. If you put the plant markers in these guys, they often get mixed up and taken out and put in the wrong place, especially if you have kids. And so it's just easy to put some tape on it. Once you plant those seeds, you're looking at probably most of the greens and the peas, they probably have a 6 to 14, 18 day germination time. And then you'll start to see them peep up out of the soil. You want to leave those in the trays until they're about 2 inches high, until you get at least 2 true leaves of the plant. Once you have the first 2 true leaves, they're kind of immune to the pill bug and earwig damage. So when you plant those, you'll have a much higher success rate with them surviving.
So that is starting indoors. Also, we have this really great tool at Figure Supply that I discovered upon working there called the Widger. And
I spent 15 minutes looking for our Widger before we went on live.
They're hanging on the car, but they are a great little tool to they're a curved metal stainless steel piece that helps you safely get out the seedlings once they're ready to transplant and put into the ground, so you don't damage or have to like squeeze anything. It's really.
We'll do another show on actually transplanting your greens, but basically be very careful not to pull the stem. Don't use the stem to pull the seedling out. You want to get at the edges of it either with a Widger or a knife. Yeah. You want to avoid root damage at all costs, because root damage won't necessarily kill the plant, but it'll send it into shock, and then it'll take a little longer to do its thing.
Yes, and winter vegetables take a very long time anyways, so you really don't want to delay that. What are some seeds that you just really should be starting right now as soon as possible, and what are some seeds that you could be waiting a little bit?
The things that come up very fast are radish, arugula, and most of the lettuces come up pretty fast. Things that take longer, the brassicas, cauliflower, broccoli, Brussels sprouts. So they're a great thing to plant seeds now, and then you'll probably get them into the garden early December, and then you'll be eating them in January, February, and then by the time it comes around to March and they're done, you'll be ready to plant your tomatoes. So think of the brassica family as slower. The roots are also much slower. Carrots, beets, turnip, parsnip, daikon radish. Carrots, you're looking at probably 3 or 4 months before you can start harvesting. So they're a great thing to put in now. I find that they're a thing in my garden where I kind of plant them and leave them alone, ignore them, and give them a little love from time to time, but ignore them in terms of wanting to eat them. And then you'll find in 3-4 months, they'll all come up at the same time. Whereas the lettuces you'll be constantly eating after about 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, say we've either started indoors or maybe even outside, and you've put in a couple of seeds of those teeny tiny little seeds into one of those cells that you pointed out to us earlier, and voila, you have 3, 4, 5, 6 plants growing in one little cell. What is your best method for thinning these out so that they have the best chance of survival?
Well, first of all seeds vary in size, and probably the smallest are the celery seeds, and then the lettuces are pretty small too. So when you're putting them in the trays, it's inevitable you're going to, drop 3 or 4 seeds into one cell, or 5 in another, maybe 1 in another. And if all those seeds germinate and come up together, what you do is you wait till they're about 1 inch or 1.5 inches high. You pick out the strongest, fittest looking plant, and then at the soil surface, you just snip the stems of all the other ones around it. That will immediately kill them, and you'll have one guy who will have all the energy to grow in your cell, and then transplant him when he's 2.5 inches high. So don't pull them. The problem with pulling is you're going to create transplant shock, and once you cut the stem above the surface, the plant can't grow. It'll just die. But if I try to pull that out, you're going to be ripping at the roots, because the roots will be a little bit intertwined.
Absolutely. All right, so we've been successful in starting our seeds. They're 2 to 3 inches tall. They have real leaves, and we're transplanting them, and or we direct sowed, and they're at that point already. And then the wonderful neighborhood squirrel population or bugs come and attack your plants. What is your best solution for protecting these seedlings once they're in your garden?
Yes, you definitely want to protect those babies. Usually, squirrels really only go after fruits, as a rule of thumb. They do eat other things, but they're generally going to go after fruits. And the sweeter the fruit, the more they're attracted to it. Nuts and fruits, think squirrels are nuts and fruits. Really what you have to look out for in the wintertime is we get a lot of aphids, and we get a lot of cabbage moths. So those pretty white butterflies you see flying around your garden, they're going to lay some eggs underneath the leaf where you can't see it. Nature very clever. And pretty soon, a little caterpillar will hatch from that egg. You'll see a big hole in the leaf, and that's cabbage moth. And they're usually prominent when the weather's a little warmer. You don't see them when it's below like 50, 55 degrees. And ditto with the aphids. The aphids are those tiny little white specks you see, or they could be brown as well. They don't eat the leaves, but they suck the cellulose from the plant. And they multiply very fast because it's little known fact, Sam, that aphids are born pregnant.
Sounds like
right. So what I recommend to everyone to do with the winter plant, it's a great solution, is get some neem oil. And the good news for anyone says, I came in and asked for neem oil the last month and you don't have it. It just arrived yesterday, 4 big pails, so we'll have loads of neem oil. And what the neem oil does is it has an enzyme in it called azadirachtin, and azadirachtin is an endocrine disruptor. So any leaf-eating insect cannot digest or reproduce. And what happens is they die after 24 or 48 hours. It's completely safe for pollinators and non-leaf-eating insects. And what I'm going to recommend is if you spray it once a week on your leaves for the first 10 weeks of growth, the leaves absorb the azadirachtin, and then whatever's laid on the leaf, once they bite into the leaf, they're automatically getting it, and they can't survive it. But it's a great solution. The neem oil is fantastic. Other people do recommend bamboo vinegar. Bamboo vinegar is also a great pesticide. It does many things. But one of the things about, well, first of all, what is bamboo vinegar? So when they make biochar, which is made from bamboo, the distillate, or the vapor from the burning, it's captured, and it's basically liquid smoke. And that is also a foliar feed for your plants, and it is an insect prophylactic. And also, one thing that Sam was telling me today is we've had some people say that they've used some of their old seeds and they have a very low germination rate. And we have 2 people who swear by this for low germination seeds. And you use 3.8 mil per gallon of water, and you soak the seeds in it. And 3.8, this is probably about 330 mil, this bottle, so you can see it's a tiny amount of bamboo vinegar to water. So that's another great thing that you could use. And trying to keep pets, dogs, cats out of your beds. A couple of things you can use. Try cayenne pepper is the first thing. If you take a shaker, like a baker's duster, flour duster, and fill it with cayenne pepper and sprinkle it all around the soil. And cats and dogs, when they go in there, they're sniffers. They'll sniff it, it'll burn them, and that generally will keep them away. And then there's also coyote urine, which will keep the cats and dogs far away.
And squirrels.
And squirrels,
bunnies,
yes.
All that kind of stuff. Yeah, absolutely. So, sorry, I'm just looking at the questions here. The tips and tricks on the germination, you covered that with the bamboo vinegar. Also, the instructions, every bamboo bottle comes with instructions on it, so you don't need to remember the exact 3.8, whatever milliliters it was.
It has a pipette, so you can measure what you take.
Mm-hmm.
Pipette is the little extractor thing here with it. Squeeze.
Yeah. So, Conor, I see you have a few of our varieties, and you're obviously in front of our brand new winter seed collection. What are some of the varieties that you are most excited about this year?
Look, we've got some incredible lettuces this year. Deer tongue. We have the tennis ball baby. It's like a baby butter lettuce. We have amazing chimarrón. It's such a beautiful color. It's a green and red, a big butter lettuce, really beautiful. Excited this year for the purple snap peas. They're so gorgeous. I grew them last year. They're really gorgeous. These, I love shelling peas. Most people, I think, prefer snap peas, but I love shelling peas. And these guys, the sugar pod is a fantastic shelling pea. Also, we have purple cauliflower. I like colors. We have purple cauliflower. A thing that not a lot of people know about is mustard greens. There's so many different varieties, and mustard greens are really delicious. I mix them in with regular leaf lettuce in a salad, and they just give that lovely little spicy bite in it. And 4 or 5 varieties of mustard greens. So, yeah, we have the whole lot here, Sam. We have purple bok choy, we have edible flowers, we have calendula, we have sweet peas, leaf broccoli, that's broccoli rabe, and we have green and purple in that. And tons of root crops, radish, carrots, turnip.
Yep. Yeah. The one last thing I want to cover before we, kind of wrap things up is spacing. So I notice, what I know is that you can really crowd a winter vegetable bed, especially when it comes to lettuces, spinaches, things like that. They don't take nearly as much space up as your summer crops. So do you want to go over a little bit of spacing of winter varieties?
One thing I love about the winter garden is you can get huge production in a small space. And the space it takes to grow one tomato plant, you could probably grow 30 heads of lettuce. So I like to grow the lettuces. I like to grow pretty close together. Let's just take 2 here. Say this is our spinach, right? I'd be literally growing them 4 or 5 inches apart, and I'll tell you why. It's because you're constantly going to be harvesting from the outside, so you don't need that space. They won't be getting all crammed together because you'll be harvesting all the time. The same with the lettuce. There's no need to take a head of lettuce and cut it off, and that's it. You can keep harvesting for 3-4 months, 1 head of lettuce. Same with the spinach. So I like to grow those guys really close together. Like I'm talking 4 inches apart. Mm-hmm. The brassicas are different. So if you want to grow cauliflower, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, they need space. They're going to need to be round about 2.5 feet apart, 2 to 2.5 feet apart, because you're not really harvesting as you go, and you're waiting for like the one-time crop, like a cauliflower. The broccoli, when the first big florets come, you will get more florets, but they're always smaller. Broccoli rabe is a little bit different because it grows in much smaller florets. They're not big, but it grows much more of them continuously. But they need more space. Carrots, I grow pretty close together, probably 3-4 inches apart. It's kind of the carrots. The beets need more space, probably 6 inches to 9 inches apart, because the greens of the beets get quite big. And remember, you can harvest the greens and eat the greens while the beet is growing. Just don't take all the leaves off at one time, or the guy's going to be history.
You're going to have to harvest that beet too. Right. Good. A couple varieties that I really love that we have both in seed and is the spigarello. It's my favorite winter vegetable. It's so delicious. And Kaletz.
Let people know what spigarello is. It's basically described as a leaf broccoli, but it doesn't really grow a flower or a floret. You're growing for the leaves. Mm-hmm. And leaves are this beautiful, tender, spinachy, broccoli type green, superb. If you saute them, it's just really beautiful.
Super good. The stems and the leaves. You can eat the whole plant. It's amazing. And then Kaletz, which is what we have in stock right now. Those are great. So it's a kale. It's a mix of a kale and a Brussels sprout. It grows like a Brussels sprout, but instead of having little cabbages, they're little bunches of kales. And those are super good, sautéed or in the oven. I like those.
Just to back up here a little bit for people, if you have a lot of space, grow the brassicas, grow the broccoli, the cauliflower, the Brussels sprouts. If your space is limited, focus on the leafy greens because you just get much more value per square foot with the leafy greens than you do with the brassicas.
Yep. Beth Goodman asked if we have any red snap peas. We don't have any red snap peas, but we do have purple and green and Tai Chung and a bunch of other ones. And then we also have a lot of kale seeds. I think we have 5 or 4 varieties of kale right now. They're going to be on your left there. Yeah, or on your right.
We've red Russian kale, we've scarlet flush, we've winter boar,
Toscano, and Black Magic.
And it's fantastic to do a kale garden with multiple types of kale.
Yeah, and it's
not
great.
only it really tastes lovely.
And kale is a year-round plant here, so you can be planting. You could have a rotating crop if you wanted to. You know, you could be starting some seeds now, some in a couple months, some in the spring.
You can, and not a lot of people know, but Kale and Chard can over summer here. They can take the heat. They do get a little bit bitter in the summer compared to winter, but a kale plant or chard plant can last for 3 years. And they'll get through the summer season even when it's hot.
Yes, they will. Great. Conor, did you have any other things that you wanted to wrap up this session with?
I don't know. I felt like we had a couple more questions.
We covered it all.
Okay.
We did.
What's left to say except we have a ton of beautiful things in the nursery right now. I'm going to give you a little view. If you can see that. Is that working, Sam?
It will go up a little bit.
Up.
Lots of beautiful things in the nursery.
And remember your edible flowers and your pollinators. And they're very important things to have in the garden.
Yeah, absolutely. Next week, actually, our talk will be with Joan Stevens, also known as Mama Botanica, and she has the most incredible flower farm in her backyard. It's unbelievable, and so she's going to be talking about the importance of pollinators and how to grow and where she sources her flowers and bulbs and all these things from, so I'm really excited about that. Yeah. So that's next week, Wednesday, and yeah.
And what else, Sam? Yeah, the berries are coming in November, right? The blueberries, blackberries.
Berries in November. Pre-order for bare root fruit trees in November. Those arrive in January. Very exciting. And then I'm going to do a little plug for
November, right?
So I'm going to do a little plug for next week. We're going to be doing Halloween celebrations at Fig Earth Supply. So we know that, you know, this time, me being a mother myself, I know that the Halloween is one of the best times of the year for kiddies, and they can't do anything this year. So if you schedule an appointment, we encourage you to come in dressed up in costume or bring your kids dressed up in costume, and we'll be having scavenger hunts throughout the nursery. And if your child or you complete the scavenger hunt and find all the items, you'll get a free pack of seeds. And we'll have some other cute, fun, social distance Halloween activities here at the nursery. So come join us next week. All right. Well, thank you so much, Conor. Thanks for joining, and thank you everybody else for joining us today. And we'll see you hopefully in the nursery again soon.
Bye.
Bye.